Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Welcome back to Making Data Simple. Al Martin here. I am with Ben Lowe. He is the founder and CEO of Lighthouse Technology. Ben, I just had Ian on so we can compare and contrast all notes. And we can see the good news is you're going last. You can counter everything that he said before. It's fantastic. Yeah. Did you listen to any of it?
Do you know what? I've just listened to part 2 this morning.
Yeah.
And, look, Ian's a great guy. I'm not quite sure how I follow the most interesting man alive because you can't top that. So I was like, what do I say that's going to be better?
Well, you know what? It's funny because we got off track a lot.
Did you?
I think we spent like 15 minutes on wine on the first one. Yeah. I think it was like a wine podcast.
Oh God, yeah,
in his venture into winemaking.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to work with Ian. We've worked together. We've known each other for like 10 years.
Yeah,
and we met in IBM in 2013, 2014 when he was doing his storage role. And initially, I think we got on because we loved motorbikes and cycling. So we always talked about two wheels. It was never really about work or anything else. It was mainly about Ducatis and God knows what. Look, and then we've worked together for a long time. So he's a good guy.
Well, you worked together before on a startup, did you not?
We did Gospel together. So I joined him relatively early in Gospel, and it was a very early conversation about the vision of, distributed data sets and how could that, it's almost like a bit of a paradoxical, how could you improve data sharing, but do it in a more secure way? And, we got into that, stuck in, right? So yeah, we built that together. So we had a good time doing that.
How did that end, by the way? I don't know if we hit that on the last one. Did it end well?
Gospel, ultimately, no. It was a very painful. I think we were just too early to blockchain, if I'm honest, Al. I still think the world of distributed data stores has a place, probably in 2030 and beyond. We were just a little bit too early. So, the reason I say yes, it was painful the way it finished is because it had so much potential. I spent 3 years building the commercial traction of that business with some amazing companies. Obviously, I'll probably be careful on the public names, but in the pharmaceutical space, in jet engine manufacturing. I almost became like a pseudo employee of these businesses. And I spent so much time with their teams and their cultures, with one of the pharma companies or clients. I used to get invited to their IT directors forum every year in Barcelona and all over the place. And it just had so much promise. So the reason it was sad when it sort of came to an end the way it did was because of the trajectory we were on until, COVID really, COVID just made it essentially unsustainable. And
so did you go straight from Gospel to your current venture, Lighthouse?
No. So what I did was, as Gospel was sort of winding down, I found out I was having a little girl. My first, that was quite, I was like, oh, this is nice. So I actually took a bit of time off through like early 2020. I took 6 months off. My wife was very busy and, COVID, lockdowns were on. And I spent a lot of time looking after myself a little bit out, like got into long distance running and loads of other different things. So had a bit of time off. And then mid 2020, I had some interesting sort of offers come up. And one of them was actually to take a role in IBM to run what was the automation business. And what we did at Gospel was a lot of it wasn't just a distributed data store, but it was about like, how do you build triggers and watchers into workflows for really important data, right? So like drug information and sensitive parts in, the manufacturing process. So actually all of that was triggers and watchers and workflows and process and that BPM world. So I took a job in IBM. I did like 3 years in IBM UK, ended up running a part of the channel business in the UK. And, ultimately that's what's led to this, right? There's lots of steps in between, but.
Was Lighthouse your idea or was it Ian's idea?
I had a feeling you might ask this, and I'm going to tell you the exact moment when it happened.
Okay, well, that's good.
I've always loved IBM. I think IBM is a phenomenal business. I think it has incredible people, amazing products. I've always had a loyalty to IBM. And when I was in that ecosystem channel role, I just had a lot of frustration, if I'm honest, Al. I thought we could be doing more. I thought the technologies were fantastic. And I thought, that there is this perfect moment in time where this world of AI was coming at us like a freight train. And it was this evolution of machine learning, and the way ChatGPT surfaced all of this stuff in such like an interesting way, but that hid a lot of what companies wanted to see. I just thought then you had this other wave of costs rising, like we've talked about, the whole turbonomic play, and the cloud costs, and businesses essentially after COVID just had to get the house back up and running. And then it was like this bit of a cost optimization phase, and AI was coming along. So I just thought, do you know what? There's this moment in time where I think there is this need for a new type of business that is able to support the IBM ecosystem in some sort of way to really showcase IBM's amazing products and amazing people in a way that was a bit maybe away from the traditional way that other technology partners were doing it, right? So I called Ian one day, and Ian, we'd sort of always kept in touch, and we actually went for breakfast. We went for breakfast in this farm shop out in the middle of the countryside, and we had this delicious full English breakfast. And I told him the idea. This is what we're going to do. And Ian, in a way, gave me the courage to do it. Ian, we stepped outside, we had a big conversation, and he said, "Look, if you deeply believe in this, you've got to do it. You've got to work out to get it through." And the logical steps come into your mind, don't they? Of, oh my God, how am I going to fund this? Like, oh my God, I've got a family, and like it's not about funding; it's I'm leaving something. I worked with some amazing people in IBM UK, and there was a little bit of element of like leaving that, and there's a price to pay sometimes, So yeah, so it was my idea, and the whole point around Lighthouse, around the brand, was helping people see into like a better future, and we believed that we could do that through technology. So fast forward, what has it been, like 18 months now? We've been very fortunate to build a nice small team, some amazing early clients that have believed in our vision of cost optimization to start with, day naught type stuff, but actually putting them on this trajectory of showcasing these different types of AI technologies in a very practical, in a very, very practical manner in this use case of enterprise IT and conversational AI. And it's been an amazing journey. I reckon I've learned like 10 years worth of experience in 18 months. It's been so condensed and intense.
So how do you become the CEO, and then what is his title? I don't know that I ever got Ian's title, or does he have a title? Not like a title matters when you're in a startup, but I'm trying to understand the key accountabilities between you two.
Yeah. Look, I think I've never been overly hung up on job titles. I've always believed in responsibilities and where people, what they can bring to the party. And my whole history has been, I got into IT commercial sort of sales, enterprise sales for a really, really weirdly young age, actually. So I've always loved building deals. I've loved building commercial transactions based on genuine value to both parties. And, the way we split responsibilities is, Ian's looking after the product vision right now and the product build out. He's been head down on all of the IBM training and some other AI language models, and I'm head down on building our commercial traction. These initial sort of early hires that we have around us that are supporting us both. Ian's obviously got this amazing background in VC funding and so on. So we've got there's a good dynamic. There's a good dynamic between us two, and that's how we're sort of splitting things out at the moment. So
do you see things differently than Ian, though? Because the interesting thing is, when I was talking to him, asking what the hardest thing of entrepreneurship was, if you just listen to it today, then you may have the answer better than me. But I think he said, look, it's knowing when to call it quits, or knowing when to move on or take the next step or whatever. And I said, well, what's the easiest? And he said, oh, starting a business. But I would presume that's a little bit different than what you said earlier, Ben, is like, for me, yeah, taking the leap, leaving friends that you see as family, that would be harder for me. But he seemed like the completely opposite end. But maybe that makes you guys great partners. How do you see it?
Having been through this process now, I do get this. I do get what he said, because in the beginning, blank slate is really powerful. And there's the old saying that there's great beauty in simplicity sometimes. When you're starting out, you have this huge amount of like adrenaline and excitement, and where it gets really hard. And I'm very fortunate. I've got another couple of friends who have recently built and exited some really interesting businesses. One of them said to me when we were like, this was like a while ago now, but when we signed our first client, he texted me saying, the real work starts after you sign the first client. This first bit's easy. Whereas when you're in that first bit, it's really hard because you're trying to get off the ground and persuade people and sell that vision of why you're going to be the trusted pair of hands, right? So, but as I've gone now through this process, I would tend to agree that actually the beginning piece is actually relatively easy looking back, because now you've got different responsibilities and different pressures, and when there's more people involved, payroll, all of like the practical stuff. That's hard. That's hard. The beginning bit's easy.
Well, let's talk tech then. If I go back to Lighthouse Technology, the way it was described to me, and it was three parts, optimizing the cloud, assessing data, optimizing the cloud. Secondly is allow clients to go back to the data center. And third, to create conversational infrastructure or conversational AI on top of infrastructure. What's your definition of Lighthouse Technology?
One thing we've learned, especially probably in the last 3 to 4 months, this technology is amazing. The different technologies from the different vendors and the different language models, the way they produce, language in different scenarios, it's all super powerful. But one thing we've really doubled down in the last couple of months is demonstrating this technology to people in a way that wows them. Because I think a lot of products, you have to really get into the nitty-gritty of what they do to understand why they do what they do. And if you look at like this amazing tool called Notebook LM. I don't know if you've seen it or played with it. It's like a Google experimental product. And what it does is you can feed it like a URL. So you can feed it, your LinkedIn profile, for example, and it will generate a whole podcast between two people talking about Al Martin. And we did a big presentation to about 30 clients in September. And what we were trying to do was to somehow demonstrate the power of conversational AI, but in a very practical manner. So when you ask people to make the leap between where they are now to conversational AI on top of infrastructure, sometimes that's quite a big leap. So, there's lots of steps to go through that. There's steps around governance and controls and who says what, how do you bring security perimeters into that? In front of this presentation we did, we actually took the event website and put it into Notebook LM and said, this is the power. This is the power of this technology, right? So then when you say, actually, imagine now this on top of this type of engagement and this type of language, natural language. Now imagine this on top of your enterprise data and your conversational infrastructure, your cloud infrastructure, your IT, infrastructure. The power of then these systems of engagement, I think they're going to change so quickly. So what we've really tried to double down on is building technology that we can show to people rather than too many PowerPoint decks and too many
co-creation strategy. Yeah.
Correct. And we talked a little bit about this, didn't we, last time we sort of met, that co-creation is so powerful in this space, especially when both sides of the fence, you're still trying to work out the value to the business, the value to the organization of this technology. So co-creating is very powerful. So in terms of Lighthouse,
in terms of Lighthouse, break that down for me. I do agree with you, by the way, is what I find as I'm working with different clients, it feels like it's kind of binary. Either I've got clients that don't know where to start. My advice there is always, look, pick something, a use case that you can achieve value within 6 months. Yeah. Or I get clients that have this grandiose vision that I gotta almost reel them in because we're going to end up in a science experiment. And my advice to them is the same as advice to the first 6 months. What's the use case? How are we going to drive value? And you got to be able to demonstrate it so that they can see exactly what they're up against. Otherwise, it feels like magic.
Yeah.
So totally agree with your last statement. What does Lighthouse bring to the table?
Yeah, Lighthouse. Look, what we're building out at the moment is something really interesting around this whole agentic AI piece that's coming into play. And there's some amazing thought leaders in IBM sharing a lot of stuff around this. And agentic AI will be such an interesting way, whether an individual has an agent about themselves that interacts with like their insurance company for their car renewal, so you no longer have to sit on hold for 40 minutes. Your agent does it for you. We're moving into this like really interesting piece. What we're doing is, what we're seeing with clients is people want a way to augment the front office and the front end of their business. So we've gone through this phase of IT and the business wants to reduce costs, and there's some tools that are great for that, right? Optimization, Aptio, Turbo, and some others. But what we're seeing is actually people want to use this AI technology to augment what we're calling like the commercial sales force, the front office. So if you're, one of the use cases we have at the moment is regulatory data in the pharmaceutical space, right? So we're building out this. It's quite really interesting. That podcast concept I talked about. What we're building out is when you're able to ingest regulatory or drug data into a private instance of that. So we're building out something called Lighthouse LM, which at some point may gather a different name. But Lighthouse LM brings together some core components of Watsonx governance and .ai and the models underneath that to actually create a very secure data store that is able to ingest data to whether it's PDFs, documents, whatever static data you want, and video like podcasts and so on, right? So when a salesperson in this drug company, this pharmaceutical company, has a meeting the following day with a client of theirs, imagine they could generate a podcast based on that sensitive content, right? So to demonstrate this conversational power. So that doctor in the morning in the car on the way to the office, to the hospital, is actually almost primed, so they can consume the content on the way to the meeting. So by the time the person turns up from the pharmaceutical client, they've actually been primed, and the content has been aggregated. It's been turned into an audio form, so it's really ingestible. So Lighthouse LM will be a really powerful product which we're embedding some IBM technologies into, that it'll have agentic capabilities on top of that based on the persona and the use case, right? So infrastructure, what Ian covered in depth was, it's super powerful to be able to augment existing technology, in the data center and on-prem. And I think by embedding conversational AI into these technologies and ingesting documentation and so on, you're almost able to help companies with this skills gap. Because when people want to repatriate the data center back on-prem, there's going to be a skills gap, because the people that used to manage on-prem data centers have now probably moved on to different jobs or reskilled or potentially retired, right? So there's something around this agentic AI that's really coming at us very quickly from clients, which is always good.
Can you describe a little bit more your definition of agentic AI, or a use case you think that'll play out that gets you real excited? Because I can tell your excitement and passion around this, but can you take it one layer deeper?
We had a guy, Alex Seymour, who described agentic AI in such a phenomenal way. It blew my mind. And he gave this like interesting analogy about the farm before tractors, were invented. The farmer never knew how much more he could yield from that space. So agentic AI is this capability to almost give different capabilities in people's roles, almost this like supercharging capability to like do so many more tasks at the same time, and have this capability make make decisions and thoughts and processing and doing that in a very, very specific way to that task. So, if you had an agent yourself that was able to call your insurance company to then do a renewal or, whatever, that's quite powerful. So I think this agent sort of a layer, I think, will be very powerful on top of what we're building.
So where is Lighthouse today?
Nearly 18 months into the journey. We've got a small client set right now. We've gone to market in two different ways. We've gone to market with some of the IBM team in the UK, and we've gone to, some clients together, and we've had a bit of success there. There's this moment in time, what I was saying at the beginning about this moment in time as to why, I wanted to do Lighthouse was because I think organizations have worked with, ecosystem partners that have maybe not quite given them the love they were looking for. And, my challenge to Ian was, how could we build technology and take some of this best of breed stuff and build technology to solve some of this engagement problem with customers? So when you sell them something once, you're not just coming back 3 years down the line and actually just waiting for the renewal or doing professional services, that traditional type of motion. So for us, where we are now, we've had some early client success. And as we're building this conversational capability on top of data and infrastructure, what I think would look, good is if we're sitting here again in 12 months and we've got, 10, 15, 20 clients that are using this and we're getting good feedback. One thing Ian and I are both, we have to remind each other on a sort of daily basis. Let's not believe our own BS. Let's sit
propaganda,
with people.
Whatever it is.
Correct. Propaganda is maybe a better word. And it's, it's easy for that to happen and it creeps in without you noticing. And it's one of the biggest things I really try and maintain in the business and the team, and especially between us two, is whatever we believe is right. My question to everyone, and to Ian specifically, is like, what's the data source for that? I think if we always keep each other honest about if we have a viewpoint and where did that come from, I think that's quite powerful. So
is most of your go-to-market then, is it the resell of like IBM or existing products like Turbonomics, so it's resource optimization, or Aptio, which is financial reporting, FinOps together? What tooling or technologies are you providing, or are you really focused on selling the IBM technologies and then building the conversational AI on top of those technologies so you end up with that conversational infrastructure?
Correct. So that's been the starting motion. The starting motion has been to demonstrate to clients the value of, existing IBM technologies, which are, phenomenal. Aptio is, still relatively new in IBM, but it's a very proven product. I was just talking to a client last week, and he said, "Oh, well, I used to use Aptio in my previous job 4 years ago. I didn't realize it was part of IBM. Yeah, let's look at that." So, that motion has enabled us to, to get off the ground, has enabled us to use our existing skill sets and, network. And it's enabled us to, openly speaking, it's enabled us to bootstrap the business through selling what we were selling before and actually now trying to build this thing on top to accelerate that. The ultimate vision, we would love that what we build then pulls IBM products and pulls, more revenue, because we're then doing it in a way that technology is leading the sale as much as, the great sales teams. And I think if we can unlock that phenomenal product set underneath to clients through a very visual way and a conversational way, I think that's what, to link this to one of your previous questions, what does good look like? To me, that's what good would look like. Good would look like leading with Lighthouse LM, and actually that enables a number of IBM sales through genuine value to people. And then you're really differentiating yourself as a technology play rather than just a reseller play, which I've never really wanted to be, and which is not a bad thing, but I just think there's a better way of using this technology to do that.
Look, I know you and Ian alike have worked at IBM. Obviously, I'm at IBM, or I believe in IBM and the tech, or I wouldn't be here. Having said that, why IBM? There's a lot of tech out there.
Yeah, there's amazing tech. I actually spent a lot of time within the Salesforce ecosystem. The Salesforce ecosystem and a number of their commercial teams, both in the US and the UK. I've got some friends, lots of friends and networks that work in lots of like Workday, Anaplan. There's some amazing, companies and ecosystems. And something I've seen, I did like 10 or 11 years in IBM in two different stints. And I always saw people leaving IBM and then coming back. People would go to
boomerangs.
Boomerangs. Yeah. And I don't know whether it's maybe a generational thing, but I always believed in a little bit of stability in career. And I always believed in longevity in a company to really understand how you can help, how you can add value to that ecosystem and to that organization. And when I used to leave, I used to watch people leave to other companies. They'd come back and say, do you know what? It wasn't overly different. It was actually more complex. You think licensing is complex here, wait till you work over there. And licensing is even a bigger nightmare. So, from a technology point of view, I over the 10, 15 years working in this stuff, I've been in so many technology bake-offs in large, complex enterprise deals that I've seen the good and the bad. And all the way through, the IBM has always remained like a constant trusted entity, whether it's to the customers and to organizations. So when picking who would be like our first real genuine partnership and go-to-market partnership, it's as much about the people and the reputation of IBM as much as it is about the technology. We've again, openly speaking, we have been approached by other vendors who like what we're doing around products, and they like what we're doing around all the podcasts. But there's an element of we're quite loyal to IBM, and we've looked at lots of different technologies. Ian's done a very deep dive on all of the different language models, where the platforms, where they all sit, and the report back was watsonx is pretty good. So
pretty good, right? It's pretty good. We tend to, internal to IBM, you've been here, so we tend to be pretty hard on ourselves.
Really hard. Really hard. Like way too hard.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why that is. The good news for me is I do have several friends, pretty good friends, all CEOs in different businesses, and you can see the other side, and it's not much different. It is amazing how many boomerangs we have. So somebody that would leave tends to come back. It's almost to a point of when somebody leaves, it's almost, hey, we'll see you here in a couple of years. See you in 2 to 5, man. And it almost always happens. So, but let me ask you, so you're going to be putting this conversational AI on top of the infrastructure. Is that going to be a differentiator amongst your clients, your offerings? Is there part of you that says, boy, I hope IBM sees how good we do it and purchases it from you? I mean, if we're being honest, what do you think? What's your go-to-market plan a couple of years from now as you're trying to sell some of the existing products today?
Yeah, good question. Maybe I've learned this relatively earlier in my life, but one of the things is trying to appreciate like the now. And one of the things we really try to just keep ourselves grounded on, just one day at a time. Just go to the next client meeting, just solve the next problem, get to the next podcast. And we're all just trying to just do our best every single day. I think our old, my ultimate vision for this is that, this is, a long way out. The way these systems interact and the way we interact with systems. When I was growing up, my dad was in electronic engineering, as it was at the time. And I remember when he came home and he brought back, and this was in Chile, so we were a few years probably behind the curve. And he brought back the first ever computer with 100 megahertz processor. And I remember him telling me so proudly. I was like, oh my God, it only takes like 12 minutes to start the thing. And the big fan would go. And like, if you had told me back then as like a 4-year-old that we would have a device like this mobile phone that's like not much thicker than a bit of paper that could store 21,000 photos, it would almost be like mind blowing. And my daughter was just yesterday just watching like probably Paw Patrol on the iPad. And I was thinking about like, where's technology going to be for her when she's like, it's incredible, isn't it? And I think it's going to be an even bigger leap. If I really allow myself to be slightly crazy and a bit provocative, the keyboard, screens, laptops, I think over time will just become obsolete to a different way of engaging with systems. I don't know if you saw the Mark Zuckerberg, those Orion sunglasses that he's released.
Yeah. I've seen commercials. Yeah.
It's amazing. So you've got the Meta ones, the Meta Ray-Bans, which are quite cool. They do a bit of recording. But the Orion ones, they project a screen in front of you and you can interact with it through touch. And I'm like, oh my God, this stuff is coming at us. So it will be everywhere before we've noticed. So my big ambition for Lighthouse is, a solid go-to-market plan with probably 2 or 3 big global organization. And, they're starting to appear already in the form of systems integrators, where we're putting this technology in a very strategic play of 3, 5, 10-year programs where, IT will have to transform, and a layer of that will be conversational. So what's it called? I think some people call it the big hairy goal.
Big audacious hairy goal or something.
Yeah.
BHAG or something.
That's it. Yeah.
Big hairy audacious goal. Yeah.
Big hairy audacious goal. Yeah, that's the solid go to market with 3 to 5 big systems integrators and technology partners where we're able to scale this far better than we ever could ourselves, even with like unlimited funding, which we'd just never get to.
Well, I like the ambition of it, because what you're doing today is saying, look, we're going to be a standard reseller to start. That'll keep the engine going so that we can move on to bigger and better things, and then that'll almost fund our innovation. Am I looking at that right?
Correct. Yeah, correct. And that, the reseller thing has happened really quickly all of a sudden, and I think it's probably through we're very grateful to the relationships, and maybe we're trying to bring something a bit different, so that's naturally attracting conversations to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe this reseller phase would go on for a little bit longer, but that's probably a testament to the product direction and Ian's vision of where we could get to, and just the market, what the market's telling us from, one of our other clients that we're working with is a very not too dissimilar, company in finance and insurance, not too dissimilar to IBM in many ways in terms of culture and systems and the way they work. And we're learning a huge amount from them. We're at the CTO level of this business in the US. We're learning a lot from them and their teams. They're actually sharing with us where their AI projects are failing right now, and where how they're thinking about value, how they're thinking about ROI. So we've just been very fortunate that we've got traction really, really quickly. It never feels quick enough, but if quicker than maybe I thought it would go.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's a good problem to have, right? The other thing is I'm a little envious of the learning. I try to pride myself on continuous learning. I mean, I've already, as soon as the Granite 3 models came out, got them, I'm playing with them. I'm envious of your situation, because I could see how in a year, given the intensity that you're under, how much you can learn. So no matter where this lands, nobody can take that away from you, the experience that you're getting along the way.
It's amazing. Somebody many years ago said to me, how they said to me, you're either earning or you're learning. And I'm definitely learning.
Would you rather be earning? That's all good.
At times. So it's a different thing. It's a different thing. It's different. It's different.
In terms of the resale, and where are you having the most success right now?
There's 2 things. If success is defined by closed deals, probably Turbonomic and Aptio. Yep. If success is defined by the amount of interest and conversations we're having, it's probably Watsonx, which probably shows the maturity of like the AI market. And there's a really interesting theme, and I'm glad this is a bit of an independent podcast, because we can talk about maybe other things, but there's been a real theme. There's been a real theme that from clients in the last 3, 4, 5 months, where they said, what, we've tried Copilot, we did genuinely try it. It had a lot of promise, and we've tried it, but we ingested a spreadsheet with 15,000 lines, and it froze. It didn't do the thing. It didn't do any analysis. it was hanging. We've used it for other use cases. So this leap to respond, I think eventually will bite people in the backside. And Mark Benioff of Salesforce, he tweeted something last week, and it said it's almost like if you're not careful, Copilot could be the next Clippy, like Clippy version 2. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, controversial. And I'm glad he said it and not me, publicly. But
well, so now you said it, which is good. Keep going.
I'm repeating what Mark Benioff has said.
Yeah. Okay.
He shared that. Yeah, and do you know what I've got some friends in Microsoft, and I've always been I've never been in the Microsoft ecosystem at all myself, so I don't really have a sway either way. But just from what I've seen from clients and potential clients, where they've gone really quickly at this Copilot thing, with GPT and the partnership there, which is that in itself is I find quite tricky from the optics of that partnership. But just if you look at it pragmatically from a technology point of view, that I don't think that technology is there. So I think what we're seeing, back to your original question about the interest, I think the way we're starting to see a lot of interest now around what's next is because people are realizing to get this technology properly in the business, it's not about the AI, it's not about the large language model, it's about the governance, it's about the guardrails. How do you manage bias and language? How do you manage hate speech potentially? How do you manage the transparency? What files have been used to generate that output? And so actually very quickly it's gone from an AI conversation to practicality of how does this work at scale? Because we've almost done the big part, the little pilots and quick pilots, and they haven't worked. Now let's maybe talk to IBM because they've been doing this for 112 years.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we've seen a bit of interest, but in terms of traction and, cash in the bank.
That kind of matches what I'm seeing. I always give full credit to OpenAI for gathering the interest commercially in the market. But then you get to a point where you've got to apply this to the enterprise. And applying it to the enterprise is a different deal. Most importantly, I think it starts with cost. It's not a toy. You've got to be able to achieve your value proposition that you've outlined. And I think that's where history is going to prove us right here, in that the models are going to get smaller, more intentional. They're going to be cost effective. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can start even testing with OpenAI or something, but ultimately, if you're going to put it into production, particularly in enterprise, you're going to have to go in a different manner.
We saw this when we were building out the first MVP of the Lighthouse product. Was GPT. It was really easy to generate an API passkey. You could do it in the evening, put your credit card in, and it generates it. And there was just no friction, and it was cheap to get going. And then very quickly, within about 2 or 3 weeks, we started hitting the product with a lot of queries and questions and connections, and input tokens and output tokens started rocketing. So we then did a spreadsheet with a projection of the different language models and their cost. And from memory, I'll have to look at the exact figures, but from memory, what's the next was something like 83% cheaper with one of the models, 83 or 88. It wasn't a small magnitude. It was a chunk. It was a chunk. So when you start extrapolating that out, it's a serious consideration, especially if you can't even see what's going on underneath GPT. There's no transparency into the reasoning. Not reasoning. I don't think these things can reason, but there's no transparency into how it's got to that answer. There's no governance. There's none of that, right? So, this is why I hope you're seeing the same thing, and we're not deluded.
Yeah, same thing. And then, the transparency is a huge deal. You want to see how the decisions are being made. The other thing is and of interest to me. Now, I know I'm just a one-man band here, but I like to put the models on my laptop, and I don't have a GPU. So, you've got to make sure it's small. I was just playing around with the Granite Dense, Granite 3.0 Dense, 8 billion model, pretty freaking good. I mean, It's right on my laptop here. I'm not using any GPUs or anything else like that, like I mentioned, and I'm using it to ingest documents. I'm using it to summarize, do research, whatever. It's working great. Yeah. And I'm still doing plenty of other things on my laptop at the same time. So it's not, I don't even feel it. Really? And my laptop's not even new. It's like a couple of years old. So
is a testament to.
Yeah. I think that's where it's going. And the other thing is I see a lot of these companies I'm working with, they're struggling a little bit with SaaS in this because they would rather have, and maybe this is the repatriation you're talking about back into the data center. They want to do some of their code on their computer itself versus have to go anywhere else. So that's another huge advantage of having this work hybrid, both in SaaS and on-prem. Well, fantastic. Is there anything that you want to hit on with Lighthouse, the tech? You know, we've been a little bit all over the place, but it's been very informational and fun for me.
I feel like we could just keep talking for
yeah. Of course.
Look, I think the main point of us is what we're trying to do is just bring a bit of I think a bit of enthusiasm and energy to this technology and the portfolio from a B2B enterprise perspective, and we're trying to do that in a way that is practical and is based on real commercials and real value. So I think what we're trying to build, ironically, like as we're building Lighthouse out, the DNA of the early founding team, I think that's going to be the DNA of the business, and we've got a really strong technical foundation. And we've got a really strong commercial foundation where, we've got a lot of credibility, I think, and we can demonstrate this technology in a very practical way. So thank you for the opportunity, and it's just good to share our story. But we're very excited about where the next, 2 or 3 years.
You're doing good things, man. You're doing good things. I like the passion and excitement. That's what I would expect to see, but you've got it in spades. Let me ask you this, though, before I go, a couple simple questions. This one should be simple. If it was a 2-minute pitch on Lighthouse.
Yeah.
So you're going into the venture capitalist, you're going to get funding and or a customer. What's your 2-minute pitch? You got 2 minutes to sell me on Lighthouse. What would it be?
Lighthouse. Oh yeah, good question. I've never thought of this because we're trying not to raise. Look, to us, Lighthouse is in this very unique sweet spot of time where there's like this huge hype, to a degree, a bit of a hype cycle going on. And there's a lot of fallout where the hype is actually meeting reality. And if you think about the evolution of like the world of IT, hardware, storage, software, AI, that evolution of almost the skill set of people moving from left to right through these technologies, we're quite uniquely positioned where we're very excited and actually understand the practicality of all this stuff underneath the covers. But we've got this very practical experience over the last 15 to 20 years, right? So we're trying to build this technology that wows people and can bring this, this to the surface for people in their everyday jobs. And we're doing that with a great partnership. We're doing that with some great early clients, and we're trying to do that with a quite, in a weird way, a bit of a frugal mindset. And we're trying to innovate out of necessity. And that necessity is making us innovate with new ideas and trying different things that maybe you wouldn't have done if you were extremely well funded. And that in itself is yielding results. So, the pitch to the VCs will be hopefully in, 12 months' time, look what we've done with limited resources and where we've got to. Imagine what we could do, with far more. But
what's true and nobody agrees with you on?
Oh, God. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me thinking?
I can see the wheels turning. That's okay. You can do it, I guess, a converse way is what's not true and everybody believes. I don't know.
I've seen amazing answers to this question. One of the things I do believe, whether people agree or not or disagree, is that I think careers should never be seen as linear. And I think very often in life, people see their careers as a very linear progression from one role to the next, And each time you get a little pay bump, but you go up through that, right? And I actually think we're moving to this new world. And, in my life, in my career, I've sort of tried new things, and that takes you to a different level. I don't know if that's a higher level or a lower level than the previous level, but it's a different level. And I think allowing yourself to be in a fearful state isn't a bad thing. Sometimes I believe in genuinely, sometimes experiencing fear is probably a good thing. And one of the most fearful things I do, outside of work, I do not that there's such a thing of outside of work really, but I do Ironman triathlons, and one of the most fearful things I think you could ever do in life is get in the water with 4,000 other people for 4 kilometers, because you get bashed about, you get hit, you get elbowed, you get swum over, you have to do the same, your goggles come off, there's seawater in your face. And actually, there's something really beautiful about when that happens and you can stay cool and stay still and just allow yourself for the situation to happen, compose yourself, get the goggles back on and keep going. So I think, one of the things I do believe, Al, is that careers should not be seen as linear, but actually put yourself into difficult situations on purpose, because you never know what they're going to yield.
That's a great answer. Pass the test. Not there was a Ben, awesome.
Oh, thank you. Good to chat.
Where are you residing? You're in the UK, right?
I am. I live just outside of London.
London.
Yeah, we work just like 20 minutes out of London.
But are your customers worldwide now, though?
They are. Yeah. So we've got an amazing relationship with 2 in the US now that we're starting to build out. It's early, but we're building those out, and we've got some great relationships there. A couple in the UK that are household names that we're working with, and they're in London and sort of the Midlands in the UK. So yeah, we're hoping to expand. We're getting incoming from lots of different regions now, so we're starting to work out how many plane tickets we need to start booking to start expanding.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Well, Ben, thank you for being on the podcast and chatting with me today.
Thank you.
You and Ian look to be doing great stuff, so I wish you nothing but the best.
Cheers.
And listeners, thank you for listening. Hit us on atalmartintalksdata@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you on the podcast. Bye-bye.
Cheers.